It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
Laugh.
We had a little fun, because it's a very long day, you know.
And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is The Focus Group with Tim Bennett.
All right, let's go already.
And John Nash.
Pucker up, Buttercup.
With a focus on career, the consumer culture, and marketing from an LGBT point of view. We're all business, except when we're not.
Hello, everybody. I keep saying that. I keep trying to practice so that doesn't sound so goofy, John. Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Hey, it's Tim Bennett here with my good friend and co-host, John Nash. We are the Focus Group. Join us here every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. East through our Facebook feed or through our YouTube channel, which is also branded Focus Group Radio. You could also find all the other multiple platforms that we're available on if you head over to focusgroupradio.com and check out all the different platforms, whether it's iHeart or Stitcher, which I don't know. What is Stitcher?
Stitcher is a podcast platform for the Android device.
That's why I don't know it. I'm an Apple guy.
So you're an Apple guy, so you don't know Stitcher.
So if you're an Android guy or girl...
Stitcher may actually be for iOS as well, but I just associate it with Android.
Okay. And then you can follow along with us through our social media. We're mostly active on Facebook, and we have 2 Facebook pages. We don't know why. Because
yes, you do. You set up one years ago.
I set up one as a group, and one is set up.
And they changed their rules.
And then they changed the rules, but it's so funny because I'll post something on the one page, and the audience is there's probably a 25% overlap, but generally they're different audiences and respond to different things. I try to give equal rights to both, but usually Focus Group Radio with the yellow icon is the one that's the most up to date. The other one, the group page, gets the shows and gets some things, but doesn't have all the pictures sometimes.
So one is the favored child, and one is the
one with the gold icon that says Focus Group Radio.
child.
That's the favorite child. Yeah. So John, who's on the show today?
Got a big show today.
Big show.
Besides our business birthday, our visit with Deep Discount, and what caught our eye, we're going to be welcoming Newsweek staff writer Christianna Silva. She's going to be talking to us about 2 articles. Originally, one article that you and I had come across that she wrote, a fascinating look at the states that are losing billions of dollars, or states in general that have discrimination policies or discriminatory policies, and how much money that actually costs. I mean, right. A boycott is a very public face of something, and it does have results, but there are hidden costs to not treating your citizenry with equal protections and good civil rights. And then she just did a piece last Friday on Amazon's search for their new headquarters and how possibly a state or a municipality's LGBT approaches to our civil rights could have an impact on that decision, which everybody's scrambling because it's thousands of jobs, lots of money.
50,000 jobs minimum.
Minimum?
Yeah. It's going to bring 50,000 jobs. Whatever city gets it will get 50,000 jobs.
It's not a distribution. This is an HQ,
it's
right?
another headquarters, which I never quite understood.
Like there's one in Seattle, right?
Right. The big, which is
Mothership,
right near Jay and Jason's. But I don't understand when you have 2 headquarters. It's kind of to me like Fred and Ethel, or Lucy and Ethel. You know, the co-presidents of the Wednesday afternoon Fine Arts League. Who's in charge?
True.
So does the New York headquarters decide something different than Seattle? Isn't Seattle the mothership?
It's funny.
It needs to be one person or one thing in charge.
Well, when you think of Microsoft, there's one company headquarters. Yeah. There's Apple, Cupertino, the new spaceship, the new circular office they have. When you even think of auto companies, they don't have, they have satellite offices.
They have offices. You would have a North American headquarters, perhaps, or you would have a European headquarters. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they've got it figured out more than you and I do.
Now, our producer Matt had sent a note about a hashtag that's trending. Now, I was curious if you did any research on that.
No. Why is it trending? What is it?
Basically, he says here that the hashtag is "I blew the interview when." So people are listing when they knew they blew an interview by saying, so it's hashtag "I blew the interview when," and it would be ... I could think of 10 things.
Well, why would that be hot today, I wonder?
I don't know.
I blew the interview when?
It's, hashtags and social. There's a whole...
Okay, well, so could you answer that?
I couldn't from a job point of view, but I could. If in my case, it would be I blew the pitch win. Like if I was going out to pitch a new client.
Well, that's yeah.
There were
Well, you were
often
looking for
times.
business.
Yeah, there were often times when I knew that one misplaced word or one bad answer, suddenly you're like, oh, okay, I don't think we're in the running for this.
I mean, we've had some really bad. I shouldn't say really bad. We've had some difficult guests here.
Yeah.
My favorite one was the woman who wrote the book, and I can't even remember her name, but she wrote a book about advertising and marketing.
Yeah.
She was going to talk all about advertising and how commercials have changed. You remember this person? And so you and I, smartly, because it was that season, it was this time of year, it was right after, actually, the Super Bowl, which is the granddaddy, the Christmas for ad execs because of all the great advertising that gets released around the Super Bowl. And you and I asked her what her favorite Super Bowl commercial was. I didn't watch it. And you just told me you're an expert on advertising and marketing? That's the one thing. It's like someone that is in the movies, and you said, what did you think of the Oscars this year? What did you think of the movies this year? I didn't watch them.
I hate movies.
Hate movies.
I'm going to remind you of the...
Which one are you thinking?
I'm reminding you of the former ad exec who wrote a spy novel in honor of his son. He comes into the studio. We had a 5-minute break at the time because we had the news.
You went to the restroom,
I went to the restroom,
rare.
And it was rare because I normally would wait till after the show. And I come back, and he's sitting in the chair, and you're staring at the door, this big soundproof door. I open it up, and I look at you, and I'm smiling, and you're just like, this look on your face was like. The light goes on, the show starts, and it was the biggest dud of an interview.
We should find that.
I have easy to find.
You know, when we do we were talking about this at lunch, doing a 10-year anniversary, and we should do some of the highlights of these things because this person. So what this person tells me that wrote this book while John was in the restroom was that. He said, how's this going to go? I said, well, we're going to ask you about the book, and we're going to ask you how you decided to write it and whether this was how much of it's true or fiction. He says, I don't want any direct questions asked of me. I've got severe Asperger's. I said, you're here for a radio interview. You've got severe Asperger's. An interview
is nothing but direct questions, right? You didn't tell that. So he left. We go to break. And I said, oh, my God, Tim. And you said, well, here's what happened. You go to the bathroom, and his handler, the PR person, said, you know, there was this exchange, the one you just recounted about, don't ask me direct questions. And then there's the flip side where we were going to interview Ron Reagan Jr.
Right.
And the PR people usually...
The publicist was not on the ball.
Not on the ball.
Surprise.
Yeah, and so we're doing we get to the thing, no call, we're kind of doing and then our producer calls the number we were given as backup, which apparently was his private home line.
Having breakfast.
And it was like he had just woken up, but guess what? He gave a terrific interview.
It was fantastic. Probably one of the best
Did not
ones.
Complain, did not say a word. He was a great interview.
Because we could hear it, and it might have been Matt at the time. It's like, no, now. No, there's an interview now. You know, you're live on the radio. Okay. Just puts it on hold and says he's ready. But but we've had other people. Remember the other woman who decided she wasn't going to come on?
You could hear her eating cereal.
Screaming.
I'm having my breakfast. All right.
I'm going to find that book. We should can that book after that.
We didn't. Yeah, we didn't.
It was the only crazy we had.
Quick one for you. We had our chimney cleaned this weekend.
Why?
Every 2 years, 2 or 3 years, we have a chimney sweep come.
Didn't Santa come down and clean it out earlier?
With his red and white coat. Ooh, that's a good one. So the guy that comes to do our chimney has been doing it for many years now. His name is Kim, and he's local to the county upstate. Super nice. And
His first name or last name?
His first name is Kim.
Kim, okay.
And the first time he ever came and he did the chimney sweep, he said, I want to alert you to something. And we're like, what is it? He goes, you were at creosote level 3. Now, I'm thinking there's
like threat level orange?
Exactly. It's like DEFCON 1? Is it DEFCON 2, threat level orange? I said, so is there a higher level than creosote? He goes, you don't want to know about creosote 4. You don't want to know about 4. 4 is a big problem, but you were at 3. You want to keep it at 1 or 2. So now we do every 2 years. It's not that expensive. I love this guy, though, because when he comes, I always learn something intriguing about the county or just about business and stuff in general. So we got on this conversation about cars. And he was talking about how his dad used to teach him how to repair cars when he was a kid.
Right.
You and I can both raise our hands for that one. We were both would-be mechanics. And then we got talking about kids in general and about raising young adults. And he just said, he goes, you know, my dad said to me, and I have to read it this way, you have to prove yourself to yourself first before you can prove yourself to someone else. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. It's kind of
prove yourself to yourself first before you prove yourself to someone else.
Bingo. I thought that was a good piece of little business wisdom.
It's kind of my grandmother's work with what you have to get what you want.
Wait, say that again? You have to
work with what you have to get what you want.
There you go. There you go. So thank you, Kim, the chimney sweep. I just wanted to share that.
Kim, the chimney sweep. What did he charge you to clean a chimney?
Oh, I don't remember.
Why is there a creosote buildup? Bob burning bad wood?
I just think creosote builds up in general when you...
These are the questions you ask. I don't care about kids in the county. Why? I want to know why the creosote built up.
I did ask another question, though. One of his most unique... I said, what is one of the most unique businesses you work with? And he right away said there's a...
Crematorium?
Oh, my God. I didn't even think of that one. Pet or human, could it, right? No, he works with a place called Hill Rock Whiskey. And these guys in Ankrum, up in the county, built a unique... room, and they burn peat that's shipped over from Scotland, and the smoke from the burning seasons the grains that are then used to make this whiskey. I went online, I checked the site out, it's pretty cool. They have to clean this special peat room once every 3 or 4 months, because if they don't, the creosote from the peat builds up, burns out these really expensive motors on these fans that pull the air over the grain. I just thought I thought, wow.
So did he get up on your roof with a broom and a top hat?
Not at all. It's all done from inside the house. And in fact, our previous owners had a door put, like a little metal door put in the back of the chimney, and you could actually open it up, and there is a brush that he adds attachments, and it keeps going up and up till it hits the thing at the top. But not one.
And I'm sorry again. What did he charge you?
I have no idea. I don't. Bob pays that bill. I haven't seen.
I'd like to know what you got charged for that. It sounds like... Anyway, John, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
Mine's an advertising one.
It is.
We're off the chimney sweep now. It's advertising. So this is we're having a few. Are we okay, John? We're good. Thumbs up. We have John on video. We have Garrett on audio, and Allie just joined us in the booth. And our crew is struggling with some internet connection issues today, but they've managed to pull everything together. So I came across an article in Fast Company about a photographer who has an exhibit called Parallel Universe, and it's a simple idea. Basically, he looks at ads from the 40s and 50s, which had very sexist themes, or I would almost say misogynistic, and he reimagines them as if the man was the subject of, the housewife kind of thing, whatever. And I'll just read the beginning. It says, the way ad men in the 40s, 50s, and 60s saw it, the perfect housewife would be a literal doormat who would willingly receive a spanking should she dare buy stale coffee. Ooh. But if she brings her man breakfast in bed on her knees, she'll get that vacuum cleaner she always wanted for Christmas. So he recreated a couple of ads, and the photographer's name, let me get this here. It's buried in here somewhere. I'll find it in a sec.
These are old 40s, 50s,
40s, 50s, and 60s print ads.
And he reversed genders, reversed roles.
He totally reshot them and redid them. So let's look at one of them. I think one of them, yeah, this is a famous one. I mean, look, my God. When you see it now, you're like, that was in a magazine, right?
Right, so it's a guy. So the original one is a woman laying out like a tiger rug, right?
I think it says it's nice to have a girl around the house.
That's true.
Yeah, but not like that.
Right. And then the remake is the same, and the guy's standing there with his foot on her head. And then the second one he redid is...
It's nice to have a boy around the house.
Nice to have a boy around the house, and a woman with heels, we assume.
Yeah.
Could be a woman with heels, might be same sex.
Nowadays, yeah. The photographer's name is Eli Rezkala. So let's look at another one, too.
That's what I would have done. I would have done a guy on that. That would have been interesting.
And this is the classic, right?
If your husband ever finds out,
yeah,
what should you do?
It's
coffee.
Yeah, and that was the referencing the stale coffee. So look, she's getting spanked. I mean, and he did a nice job of recreating it on the other side with the guy getting spanked by the woman.
It's funny you say that because I was watching an old I Love Lucy on the Hallmark Channel, and Lucy did something, and Ricky threw her over his knee and started spanking her.
Yeah. Well, that's that whole mentality of a woman's place, the whole bit. And there's one last photo that he had. And yeah, this was a Van Heusen one. I should share this with Bob's company because he's with PVH now, and the V is Van Heusen.
So
Show
she's
her
on her
it's a
knees.
man's world. So he's in bed and she's serving breakfast. I mean, how subservient. And then I love the way they flip it around. Show them it's a woman's world.
I like that.
Yeah. I just thought it was fun. I shared
Somebody
that.
took that out on the left last year at the auto show and posted them all around. I don't know if you know, it was a disparaging guerrilla campaign about General Motors.
Really?
It was Mary Bear, and I forget the guy that was in there.
And they did that.
Yeah, that she was his lapdog. It was nasty.
So again, the photo exhibit is called In a Parallel Universe, and the photographer is called Eli Rezkala.
Great idea.
I think it's fun. Yeah.
And they're good ads. I mean, it would be fun to actually have a couple of them.
I'm going to start doing a little research on that and looking to see more of his work. I'd be curious to see more of what he did. But, you know, I shared this with you. I was going to do a different one, and then I shared this with you. And you said, no, do this one. And I'm glad we did because it's a good look at advertising.
It's a good one. Mine is boring, I think, a bit. I shouldn't say it's boring because I've set it up wrong, but a bit different, and probably the sort of thing you would have picked. So the title is "The Last Straw: Is It Time to Give Up This Plastic Relic?" So it's about plastic straws. So if I were to ask any of you as a Jeopardy question, how many straws do you think we throw away each day?
Each day.
Each day. How many straws do you think
day.
Americans throw away each day? Anybody want to take a guess?
I'm going to guess 21 million.
21 million. You boys in the booth or Allie have a guess?
100 million.
100 million? John?
I mean, let's go for $1 billion.
$1 billion. Look at him. Oh, you don't have, Allie doesn't have a mic. Well, the number is each day, Americans only throw away 500 million plastic straws.
So Garrett wins. No, it's closer because John said $1 billion.
$1 billion. Which is enough to circle the earth twice or fill 125 school buses.
A day?
A day. That's how many plastic straws we throw away. And they said that means the average American uses 35,000 straws per person in a lifetime. And they think that could even be a low estimate because they said on average when this just happened to you and I at lunch today, we probably went through over 10 straws. By the time we had refills on iced tea, we had water.
Well, at the very least 6. But you're right, at the most.
So and maybe if you get something later today, they said what happens is the challenge is this guy had gone to New York. He said, I was in New York and LA, and he goes, I had on average, eating the 3 meals out, I'd receive close to 10 straws a day. He said most of them I just threw away. It says plastic straws are the 6th most common type of litter worldwide. And it's one of the top killers of marine debris. So when, there was a classic YouTube viral video of a sea turtle with a straw stuck in its nose, and that went viral. So there's a group that's called Stop Sucking that's decided that they want to stop usage of straws. And what they said is so there's a couple of options. And they said, a lot of people need it sometimes to reduce damage of sugary drinks or acidic drinks on your teeth, or some disabled people need them. But they said what has happened is most disabled people would have a reusable straw that they carry in a case. And they said that probably is not practical, but they think you could switch to paper straws.
Or why use a straw at all? I mean, so I don't know about you, but like I often, if I'm served something, I'll just take the lid off and drink normal.
So what they said is, in Seattle tried this. It was called, they had a campaign in Seattle where they had just said to people, just say you don't want the straw. And they showed 50 to 80% decline in usage of straws just by people saying I don't need a straw. So they said
50 to 80% decline.
Right, they said we're not telling. It was called. They said we're not telling you not to use them, but what we're saying is that it's not necessary. So there's all kinds of campaigns going on. They've decided now the state of Oregon, which was way ahead of everybody, but the state of Oregon and now in Washington State, they've banned all plastic straws and plastic cutlery.
Wow!
By the end of this year. And then 2020, and I thought this was, by 2042, the UK has decided to ban all plastic straws in cutlery. 2042. I said, what's the rush?
You know,
Can you imagine waiting to 2042? I thought it was a typo.
when you say that we use enough in one day to fill 25 school buses or circle the earth how many times, why would you wait to 2042 to stop this insanity, right?
Yeah.
And when we grew up, we had paper straws.
Well, and that's what they're saying. They said, why don't you just make them in paper again? Because of all the fossil, because it takes oil to make these plastic straws. They said they're not recycled, and that's the part that I was confused about. They said that they're unable to recycle them because they're too small and they're all made out of different types of plastic.
Yeah.
So that other campaign was Strawless in Seattle. And they said they've saved 2.3 million straws just in 3 months by telling businesses to switch to paper or biodegradables or saying you don't want them. So that was
I like that one. That's a good one, Tim.
Yeah.
And I would have definitely, that would have.
A little wonky.
Well, we flipped. So I'm doing the one that normally Tim might do.
Yeah.
And you're doing, you're doing that I might do.
So our business birthday today.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
Oh, the technical guy. I blame Trump.
Blame Trump. He'll blame Obama then.
I didn't know who this person was. Marjorie Morris Scardino. She was born Thursday, January 25th. So this Thursday on January 25th, she'll be 71 years old. She's an American-born British executive. She was the first female chief executive of a FTSE 100 company when she was appointed CEO of Pearson in 1997. She's also a non-executive director of Nokia and former CEO of The Economist. She joined the board of Twitter as the very first female director after a controversy involving a lack of diversity on the Twitter board. Why are you laughing?
Because we've only heard that company's name pronounced that way once.
And we use it all the time.
Never forget it because on the Twitter.
On the Twitter, we thought he was kidding. Yeah. Twitter. So, so Pearson PLC, it's a British multinational publishing company, an education company. It's headquartered in London. It was founded as a construction business in the 1840s. It shut down construction activities in the 20s and switched to publishing. But one of their big projects, among many of the construction projects, was building the East River Railway tunnels here in New York City.
Really?
Yeah, so they were responsible for that. It's the largest education company, as I said, and the largest publisher of books in the world. The United States spends over $500 billion a year to educate kids with textbooks from the age of 5 to 18. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So they said that Pearson obviously wants to get a big chunk of that, chunk of those dollars. There's a little bit of controversy while she was CEO. She became a trustee of Oxfam during her tenure, and Oxfam, she was criticized by Private Eye magazine because Oxfam campaigns against corporate tax avoidance as part of their IF coalition. Pearson was a prolific tax haven user, rooting hundreds of millions of dollars or pounds through an elaborate series of Luxembourg companies. So she was, but the shareholders liked her during her time at Pearson, though they were private. The profits tripled to a record 942 million pounds, which is a lot of money.
Lots of money, not bad. Good
Happy birthday, Marge. Scardino, do you know Marge?
No, and I'm glad that we get to meet some of these executives, frankly.
Yeah.
A lot of cool businesses come out of it. We learn about things that we don't normally learn about, so I'm glad for that.
Hey, a lot of you know that one of our partners here on the Focus Group is Deep Discount. Be sure to head over to focusgroupradio.com if you're going to shop at Deep Discount. They have some of the best prices of any sort of CDs or videos or movies or any kind of other merch that they offer. Merch. So if you go to focusgroupradio.com, click on the Deep Discount logo. There's the shark. I almost bought the shark for you last night. It was at IKEA. They've got a little stuffed shark that looks like that. I didn't know whether it was worth the $15.
Could have been. We could have used it on set. Could consume the microphone.
We like to get credit for your shopping. So if you head over to focusgroupradio.com, click on the Deep Discount logo, start shopping away. One of the sales they have going on currently is documentary and special interest sale.
One of my favorites, by the way.
Right. And John picked a couple, and then he allowed me to pick one. So before John talks about his, which I'm fascinated about, the one that we thought would be good for me was called I Am Divine. And as many people know, Divine is a famous drag queen known or discovered by John Waters. And I didn't realize this. So Divine was a hairdresser in Baltimore. And John Waters had met him and gave him the name Divine and the tagline of the most beautiful woman in the world almost.
But what was Divine's real name?
So Divine's real name was Harris Glenn Misled, right? M-I-S-L-E-A-D.
Yep, he was misled, that's right.
And actually from a pretty wealthy, well-to-do family. And he liked to use the name Glenn instead of Harris because he was named after his dad. But this is a great documentary that talks all about kind of the counterculture youth and everything that involved his life and a lot of the movies that he did with Waters and kind of his ups and down life. He had some issues with his sexuality along the way, whether he was honest about it. Died at a very young age. He died at 42 years old in 1988.
Is it also, do I remember that Divine also had some tax problems or something? There was something that he never paid or the estate?
Well, he used to have a thrift store up in P-Town called Divine Trash, where he brought all his thrift store finds in, and then he realized it wasn't making money, so he sold off all the stuff and then sold off all the stuff in the rented furnished apartment he had. So the IRS came and the landlord came chasing after him because of tax evasion and then stealing.
Okay.
Took off to San Francisco, did the same thing again. When he died,
They
the
finally
IRS
caught
came
up.
in again and confiscated everything and sold it off. He had an issue with paying taxes.
But I think that Divine makes this perfect subject for a documentary because John Waters and Divine kind of redefined a lot of the those that whole genre of films, right? You know, female trouble, polyester, whole bit.
Now, when I read this one,
all right, so I've watched this documentary.
you have?
Yes, I've seen it, and it's good. It's a good documentary. So the documentary is called, and it's available at deep discount, and it's under the documentary and special interest sale, although you could just search for it if you go to their site. It's called Unhung Hero, currently available on DVD. I will read to you the description, then we could talk about the actual film. When Patrick Moot's girlfriend rejects his marriage proposal at a UCLA basketball game on the Jumbotron, it unfortunately goes viral and hits TV networks nationwide or worldwide. Days after the heartbreaking debacle. Right on cue. I did that on purpose, by the way.
I know, you like to pronounce that wrong.
And I got you to correct me on that. She privately reveals why she can't be with him forever. Patrick's small penis size. Unhung Hero follows the real-life journey of Patrick as he boldly sets out to expose this extremely personal chapter of his life, confronting ex-girlfriends, doctors, anthropologists, and even adult film stars. From witch doctors in Papua New Guinea to sex museums in Korea, Patrick has a lot of turf to cover on his globe-trotting adventures to finally answer the age-old question, does size matter?
See, I thought this was Unsung Hero, and then I kept looking. So this is true.
This is true.
Did he really have that small of a penis?
No, he did not.
She said that was the reason.
That was her reason why she didn't want to marry him. But he does examine in the movie the whole notion of a micro penis all the way up to people who have problems because it may be too big. And I'm not going to tell you the end of the movie because he does pose the question, does size matter? And
you're going to leave us hanging?
Yeah. But he does come to some conclusions. It's a fun documentary. It's one of those documentaries, which I love the documentary category to begin with, because you could examine these things kind of carefully. So Unhung Hero, you had me doing Unsung Hero is my recommendation. What's the new release, Mr. Bennett?
The new release sounds to me like a Scientology auditing film. It's called Jigsaw.
Scientology auditing film.
Well, listen, it says 5 people are horrifically tortured in an old barn while being forced to confess their sins.
Sounds like Scientology.
Allegedly, right? Sounds like auditing at Scientology. So it sounds scary.
Well,
horror movies. Richard loves a horror movie.
Yeah, Bob does too. And I get so wrapped up in it.
Oh my God!
And I know that horror fans actually don't take what they're seeing as real, and they know that they're just, you know what I mean? Like, I can't disassociate that way, though. I really get
Jigsaw is 8th in the series of a long-running horror franchise, and I scream like a schoolgirl. The last one I watched was The Visitors, that Night Lamb, Shyamalan, and Ding Dong, whatever his name is, and oh my God,
is that Nicole Kidman?
Yeah, I don't know.
And they live in this house.
The grandparents, they go see the grandparents.
Oh, no, 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 no. That was a different
It's called
one.
The Visitors or something.
Yeah, and you can't leave your room at night because Granny and Grandpa aren't who they appear to
Crazy.
be.
So, but Jigsaw sounds like there's some copycat killers that have copied the Jigsaw style killing of someone who's been dead for 10 years. So they're trying to figure out who's on the loose here. So if you like horror, it sounds like a good one.
So just to recap, in the documentary and special interest sales section of Deep Discount, visit their site by going to ours, focusgroupradio.com. Click on the shark logo. Arr, says the pirate. I know, it's crazy. We talked about I Am Divine, a great documentary on DVD. Unhung Hero. You got me doing this. Unhung Hero is definitely a must-watch. I enjoyed it immensely. And the last is a new release, Jigsaw, which Tim's already scared about. He's just looking at the cover of the darn thing.
I don't like blood.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're welcoming Christianna Silva, staff writer from Newsweek, to join us to talk about... Oh.
Thanks.
Garrett.
Thanks, Deep Discount.
No, I think you got to do...
He's upset because you
got to do it again.
You missed the cue.
Thanks, Deep Discount.
There we go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We're thrown off. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break.
My interest in Volkswagen started a little bit before high school. Every time I got to the skate park, there were always the older kids who rode BMX and skateboards. And what did they drive? They drove Mark IV GTIs and Jettas. My car is a 2004 Volkswagen R32. Performance is everything to me. That 3.2-liter power, that VR6, oh, you feel like you're the fastest person on the road. There's something about action sports that's just so free. It's called freestyle, you know? There's no rules to how you can do something. And when you're on your bike, it's an escape. When I did the bike purple and gold, it just looked so good. I was like, if only I could get my car done that color. The two of them together just look so sick. I think my car reflects my personality. I look at it and go, yeah, that just says Brandon. I don't see myself ever not owning a Volkswagen. I'm especially never selling my R32. That's going to be with me until the day I die.
Brought to you by Volkswagen. Visit VW.com to learn more. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, John Nash. We're all business except when we're not, and we have the pleasure of joining us here in studio, Christianna Silva, who is a staff writer at Newsweek. And she focuses on civil rights with a particular look at LGBT issues.
I do.
So welcome to the Focus Group.
Thanks.
I keep wanting to call you Christina.
I know, lots of people do.
So it's Christianna.
It's Christianna. Everyone at Newsweek calls me CJ, if that's any easier.
Oh, I like that, CJ.
It's a lot easier than Christianna.
Where's the J? What's the J?
My middle name.
Which is?
Joy.
Oh,
there you go. All right, that's
so before we
My grandma's.
so John had seen an article you had written about how some states' anti-LGBT policies might affect workers or the business climate, and then there was something about Amazon. But before we do that, we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about being a writer.
Okay.
Because you grew up in Arizona.
I did.
And we've had an awful lot of authors or magazine writers and bloggers and so forth on, but the fact that somebody can make a legitimate living right now as being a real writer at a real news source such as Newsweek, it's fascinating because it seems like, I don't want to say a dying profession, but no, because
but it's on it now.
no, because everyone thinks they can write.
Right.
So how did you get involved in being a writer?
I mean, I've always been a writer. I've had like insane journals and everything growing up. But journalism in college, and I loved it. I'm definitely a better reporter than I am writer,
Okay.
which I think goes into it. But
So what's the difference?
so reporting is like the questions that you ask, the interviews you get, the one-on-one, the story ideas, one-on-one relationships you make with sources, and then writing is like the physical act of getting it on paper.
So the reporting part is more fun.
Oh, totally.
The building the story, the building the story part, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we were at lunch, Tim says, "I want to ask her about. Can you make a living doing this? Because it seems like, and also the media is just taking it on the chin with this administration, with the fake news and all that stuff. And news is news. You know, your stories were extremely well reported. They're the facts."
Thank you.
And the facts tell an interesting story, actually, when they're put there by themselves. So let's look at the first piece that you wrote. It was a few weeks ago, and the headline was, "States are losing billions of dollars by discriminating against LGBT people."
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, do you approach an editor with your idea? Or do they approach you and say, Christianna, we want you to look at this topic or this?
Both. So since LGBT issues is my beat, I follow it really closely, and so when things like this pop up, when studies like this pop up, they catch my eye, and I think about different angles. But also, if my editor or if another reporter or writer finds something interesting, they send it along too. So it's sort of a process.
So when you say LGBT is your beat,
tiny...
Is that every day are you constantly? We had someone on from the New York Times, Stuart Elliott. He talked about
advertising columnist,
having to constantly find news and advertising because he was the advertising writer. So with LGBT, are you finding it difficult to find stories, or you just can't? You have to decide which one's the.
Yeah, it's always picking and choosing. There are like way too many stories. I think 100 people could be reporting on the LGBT community.
Really?
And still, definitely.
So how did you get into LGBT? Was that something of interest to you, or they said, "Oh, by the way, we've got a job for you"?
LGBT.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I picked it. I'm really interested in LGBT rights, especially as it pertains to civil rights. I think it's definitely underreported and just something that.
So, what did you find about? What was some of your reporting about the states and how much money they're losing through discriminatory policies?
Yeah. So obviously. You mentioned this earlier in the show, states lose money when boycotts happen. Boycotts and protests, people don't show up to work, they lose jobs, businesses close down, all sorts of stuff like that. But there are also some other ways that states can lose money by not having non-discrimination laws. One of those ways is last year, 2 million people, about 2 million people every year leave their jobs because of discrimination or because of unfairness. And that sort of turnover costs $64 billion.
$64 billion.
Right.
That's because any training.
Right, you have to retrain.
There's rehiring costs.
Exactly. And then you have unemployed people, and it's a lot to unpack there. Another reason that it costs states money is this thing called minority stress.
I was going to ask you about that. What is minority stress?
Yeah, so it's basically people in minority groups can have minority stress, which is when you have a lot more stress and a lot more anxiety built up because you're being discriminated against, or because you don't fit in with your family, or because there's a wide variety of reasons why you would have more stress.
You may not have been out and you're trying to hide that. John always talks about this having two lives going on, right?
Right,
yeah.
Right. So
Two
this is just like
almost.
an added stress. So it leads to LGBT people are more likely to have depression or substance abuse problems than their heterosexual peers. So looking into this, one study found that if you calculate all of that in, if states started giving this and started implementing non-discrimination laws, it could alleviate some of that minority stress, which means you're paying less to care for depression, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, smoking, and states can save hundreds of millions of dollars every year by doing that.
You actually cited a couple of this. You looked at Texas, for instance, in your article, and you deep in the heart. You said if Texas could reduce the depression rates among LGBT people by just 25%, the state could save almost $290 million, and that's not chump change. $290 million is a significant sum of money.
It is.
And then you looked further and said, if you looked at reducing binge drinking or all these other symptoms of minority, what was the term you were just using?
Minority stress.
Minority stress. That's how you could reduce these costs and save money. So it's a hidden cost of discrimination then.
Right. Right.
But do you think if I'm the governor of Texas and I'm reading this, right? You have to say to yourself, whether he or she believes the stats or not. But I often wonder, two questions, I guess. I don't know what order we want to answer or tackle. But A, do the boycotts work? when someone says they're going to boycott, like with North Carolina with the transgender bill, bathroom bill. And how do you get through these state legislatures to say, you know what, if you were a bit more inclusive, you would probably have more money in your coffers?
Yeah, so the first one, boycotts are part of a larger movement, and for each different larger movement, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but it's hard to tell if one individual boycott or one individual part of that movement is the thing that turned the table. Right? Like it takes years and years before you can make a huge societal change, and it could be the tipping point, but maybe not. It's definitely the most public face, though, of all of these different costs. And pushing state legislatures, I mean, it's hard because each of the state representatives are supposed to be representing a certain group of people, and if that certain group of people really doesn't want non-discrimination laws, what is their prerogative to, try and help out the economy, or is their prerogative to do what their constituents want? It's a tricky thing.
I think that especially in the case of some of the southern states that have implemented these religious liberty bills, it seems to be that the politicians or the state assembly members that are pushing this are definitely feeding some kind of a base. It's like, we promised you we're going to do this, this, and this, and yet, to me, what I loved about your piece was when it's brought down to just simple dollars and cents, everybody's paying for this.
Right.
You could. It's just everybody pays, because if Texas saves $290 million, that goes back to schools, or that goes back to building a park or public works or infrastructure. I mean, so there's a real actual dollars and cents to saying, I don't like you and I'm going to discriminate against you by, changing state laws or by actively, seeking to limit your civil rights, right?
But that's fact-based. And is that a frustration you have in some of this? Is that just you're like, this is so obvious to me that?
No, because I don't think it's obvious. So for this piece in particular, you read it and you go, of course you would want to do that, but there's so much more that goes into it. There's so many more players in making policy and making laws and stuff that, like, I totally understand why it's such a game. You've got to tug and pull. Like, this is one thing saying this, but if every single person who voted for you disagrees with non-discrimination policy, it puts you in a really sticky situation. Yeah.
Well, that kind of segues into the next article, which is titled "Amazon's Second Headquarters: Does a Lack of LGBT Anti-Discrimination Laws Put These States at a Disadvantage?" So what's going on here with Amazon's second headquarters?
Yeah, so Amazon released this list of 20 cities for their short list. And so Amazon doesn't say that it wants a state that has anti-discrimination laws for LGBT people.
I thought you handled that really smartly in here, by the way.
It just says that it wants a cultural fit. But if you look at some of the things that Amazon has done and Amazon has stood for, they're pretty pro-LGBT rights and pro-non-discrimination laws. They've signed on to letters that have addressed lawmakers saying, please put in non-discrimination laws for LGBT people. Jeff Bezos, the CEO, was one of the biggest financial funders for same-sex marriage, and he just got an award from HRC, which is a huge LGBT advocacy.
Human rights campaign.
Yeah. So that's worrying some states. For instance, Columbus, Ohio is on this list, and in Columbus, they do have non-discrimination laws.
Which in Columbus, they have one of the biggest attended LGBT pride festivals. It's a very forward-thinking
It's like an oasis.
Which is kind of like there's always one area in a state, right? Whether it's Portland, Oregon, or Austin, Texas. So what's going on in Ohio?
Exactly. So someone I spoke to in Ohio said, yeah, of course in Columbus we have these non-discrimination laws, but what if you commute? Then he said, then your civil rights change on your commute. And that's a hard thing that they're trying, advocates are trying to push through more protections for LGBT people so that Amazon will sign on. In Texas, we talked about Texas a little bit earlier, there was a religious liberty bill that made it all the way to the governor, and he vetoed it. And one of his top aides said the reason he vetoed it is because they thought it would hurt their chances of getting Amazon.
in.
A similar thing happened in Georgia. you know, this is happening in these states where they're like, oh, they want a cultural fit. Does that mean, what does that mean, and what can we do to get their attention?
So once again, money talks. It's not about doing the right thing, but it's about money, right? I mean, for these politicians,
it might be doing the right thing. We don't know, but
and if the ends are what we want, how we get there, whether it's through this hypocrisy of being a champion of a religious liberty bill and then quietly killing it because you're killing your chance of a 50,000 job increase from Amazon dropping their headquarters in your neighborhood. I mean, the line you used in your article referencing their Columbus, Ohio thing, you interviewed a guy named Grant Stancliffe, who I guess is Equality Ohio's director, and he put it in a very fascinating way. He said one thing that people are going to think about is why a gay person would choose Ohio over the coasts. So you're relocating. Why Ohio? Maybe there's opportunity there. Maybe Amazon's there. He said that, adding that while Columbus has protections set up for LGBT people, the state does not, as you mentioned. You could lose your civil rights on your daily commute.
Yeah.
The simple fact that just because you're in a different part, a different city, maybe you're 40-minute drive from Columbus, whatever happens here might affect, you know,
right.
Which when you I thought when I read your piece, I thought this is such a brilliant, if you read between the lines, which I should have been doing. You might not have been writing between the lines, but if you read between the lines, it's a patchwork quilt. And patchwork is not like having ENDA, you know, a federal government level non-discrimination policy. Instead, you have these little things like, oh, we don't want to do this, we want to do this.
And I looked at the 20 cities, or the 20, some of them are locations. And so using that logic of saying the most LGBT-friendly policies, I came out with Boston, LA, DC, and New York. And his second tier is Philly, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Denver. And then the rest, whether it was Ohio or Miami because of the Florida stuff, Virginia, Nashville. I mean, Tennessee, they essentially said, forget it. But I wondered, what would it say if Amazon decided to pick one of these LGBT non-friendly states?
Non-friendly state. That's interesting.
That is interesting. I mean, it would say something obviously about what they mean by cultural fit, wouldn't it?
Because I was wondering, right? But I also thought, I also thought as out front as Bezos is, because he has been one of the big proponents, and that's unique. I would say in the last 10 to 15 years, and John and I having worked in the corporate space quite a bit, corporations are very reluctant to take a stand on LGBT rights, and I think Starbucks was one of the first where the CEO. Schultz had come out, and then Bezos has always been there. But a lot of corporations were not. They were very somewhat neutral about it. And I thought, if Amazon did something and said, let's just pick Tennessee, and decided to go there, are they saying, we're going to come here, but you're going to have to change, and we're going to work from within to change policy, similar to what United Airlines did when they said, we're not going to have hubs in locations that don't have LGBT protections. Remember United Airlines was going to do that?
I do.
And so I wondered if they might also be saying, you know what, we'll go to the most redneck, unfriendly sort of place and then change the culture. Or is that just me being pie in the sky?
I think that's a good question, but we'll definitely. I don't.
Put your reporter hat on.
I know. I don't see any real.
You don't see it happening.
I don't see it happening. I don't see any arrows pointing towards
Tennessee,
towards Amazon creating laws in states or helping.
Or that's an activist corporation deciding that we're gonna move the needle in the right direction, the direction we think is right. That would be problematic. So I agree with you.
And I think corporations are getting a lot more political and a lot more in favor of LGBT rights. I mean, did you guys see the Pride Parade this year? Half the people marching in it were corporations, were representing corporations. So it's definitely getting.
We have a great article for you to write.
Oh yeah.
You can credit us. To the point of a lot of these organizations that are in the Pride Parades or they have these employee resource groups, why don't they ever let the consumers know that they're LGBT friendly?
Yeah, what Tim's referring to is an interesting conundrum, dichotomy, I'm not sure what the right word is, where a corporation's employee resource groups, their forward-facing message to their employees is inclusive, and they want to create an environment where all candidates are welcome. And Pride is a very typically big day to express that on, but
get out.
We've often said that, you know, it would be even more interesting if they did a consumer-facing campaign now and then to let everybody know just how these great corporate policies are, but that's always fallen on, whenever in organizations that are talking about this, that always falls on deaf ears. Like, no, we're doing enough.
John and I were invited to a big candy company, and we were invited to a big soup company. You can figure it out. And they wanted us to come speak to their employee resource groups about the importance of LGBT inclusion and so forth. And what are you going to speak about? And both John and I said, here's what our pitch is. It's great you're doing this internally, but you would be so much further ahead if you let the general population know that you were LGBT friendly. And both of them didn't want to touch it. They're old, very storied U.S. brands. They were petrified. They were afraid to do it.
We were
disinvited.
Politely.
Yeah.
So what do you
Budget
think?
dried up.
Do you think it would? How do you think the public reaction would be to that if corporations started doing this, not just in pride parades, but more on like a daily basis almost?
I just think
you have what's your? I have an answer, but what's your?
No, you can give the answer.
I did a guest lecture at my old university a few years ago on specifically the Subaru campaign that Tim and I were responsible for about 15 years. And one of the students in the front row had been very attentive. He raised his hand at one point and he said, you know, I just want you to know that if I was aware that this car company was actively pursuing the gay and lesbian community, I wouldn't buy their car. Now, I'm not going to dissuade him from that point of view very easily. He just saw, you know, a half hour of imagery that was designed to let consumers complete the circle. There wasn't anything offensive about it. It was the very notion of the consumer that was being spoken to.
You're recognizing the
that
fact
bothered him. So I think that if I were a company, I would be mindful of that. If I had a focus group, for example, and I saw some of that pop up, I'd be like, do we really want to put ourselves out there and risk damaging the work we're doing internally by telling the consumer who might turn us off? I don't know. What's your take?
I think if it's done correctly, and I do think Subaru did it correctly. I think there's some that did not. But there's a new campaign out now for Head and Shoulders that Procter & Gamble is doing with the Kenworthy.
Yeah.
And
so
for somebody who, you know, he talks about family and pride and whatever he's got at the flag. Now, we all know what that is because we're familiar with the imagery. Some people might not, and there's nothing, but I looked at that and said, wow. You know, I saw, wow, that's a great thing. I'm kind of shocked by it, but obviously it was approved. He's an Olympic athlete, and he's a hero and a great snowboarder, So, I don't know. I think it'd be fine to let companies know. I think it's fine to let people know or to let the consumer know that you're welcoming.
Right.
I don't think you have to. I'm not saying every commercial has to do it, or it's very similar to showing diversity in commercials. You know, for a long time you never saw anything but white people, right, in a lot of commercials. And then when you started, all of a sudden now you're seeing interracial couples or maybe some same-sex couples. Cheerios did one.
Yep.
So I think it's a good thing, but you seem to look skeptical a little bit. She's looking at me like,
No, I see your point. I think I just deal with a lot of internet trolls, so I also see the other side. Yeah.
So in what way do you deal with the internet trolls?
So yeah, I would. So these two articles come out. Did you talking about the responses people have to some of this, some of your reporting?
Yeah, there's always internet trolls, Twitter eggs.
And
Twitter what?
Eggs. They're the
Eggs?
people on Twitter who haven't done anything with their profile. They just
It's
respond to people. Yeah.
And
it's
their
the
face
egg you
thing is just the
automatically-
egg. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how nasty does it get?
I haven't gotten a crazy nasty response in a while, but I am a woman on the internet, so all of us face nasty responses.
How do you let it? I shouldn't say do you let it bother you. Of course, there's something that's going to bother you about it. But how does a place like Newsweek decide? I mean, it's just you're out there and you can comment on any story. Is that kind of? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the comment sections, I mean, there's obviously a lot of conversations about the best way. Tons of different news outlets are dealing with it differently. I personally think that comment sections are really important.
Because some take them down, right?
Some places do take it down, but you're always going to have people, hopefully, sharing your articles on social media where their friends can comment on it and other people can have a conversation. And I think, for the most part, that conversation is constructive and opens you to different ideas. But sometimes it's just people being jerks online.
It's surprising to me, and I agree with you about comments. I was reading an article that it was either DC, Marvel Comics, I think, or DC. The GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Association Against Defamation, released their awards for comic books that featured gay characters. And it turns out that all the comic books are no longer being printed. And the comment section was fascinating because all the responses were not about LGBT inclusion. It was about give us better stories. Adults don't buy, they were looking at the economics of comic book publishing. Not like, no one was like, oh my God, they got rid of the gay characters. Everybody was like, well, they did because if it wasn't selling, you're not going to produce something that doesn't. So it was one of those weird things where the negative was actually not negative. It was just kind of an interesting, I thought that's when a comment section kind of.
Yeah, and in those cases, comment sections give me story ideas. So I love that too.
It reminds me of, I think you remember the talk. Remember Melissa Etheridge was talking about the comment similarly about the whole gay thing with the comics. Her parents said that they had to talk to her about something. And so she assumed it was, she said, here I go home to talk to my parents. And she's waiting for the lesbian conversation to come. And they go on and on. And so she preempts them and says, yeah, I'm a lesbian, They're like, we know, we want to talk to you about this rock and roll thing. Which was so great because it was like she was all wound up of, oh my God.
Isn't that adorable?
And they're like, oh yeah. We want to talk to you about this
rock and roll thing. Rock and roll.
Not so sure that this is a good way to go.
I always love a story like that. Hey, Christianna, are you going to come back and join us again soon?
Yeah,
we're going to keep following what you're doing. I want to thank you for making time for us today. Again, Christianna Silva is a staff writer at Newsweek. Do you want to throw out, do you have any, your Twitter or any of your stuff?
Yeah, you can follow me at Christianna J.
Christianna J for joy.
Yep, on every social media platform, very consistent.
Christianna Joy, or Christianna J.
Christianna J. Or if you work for her, you're allowed to say, or with her, you're allowed to say CJ.
Anyone's allowed to say CJ. It'll just be hard to find me on the internet with CJ.
So on Facebook, we had tagged you on our Facebook post. So if people click on that too, they can follow you there.
Like a page where you can follow me. You can see all my articles. I post them there.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure, and we look forward to having you back with some more stories. I'm going to be following you religiously because this is going to be food for our show as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to take a really quick break, and when we return, we're going to wrap up the show, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Brought to you by Volkswagen. Visit VW.com to learn more. Now back to the Focus Group with Tim and John.
Because he has a lot of chutzpah.
An entertaining look at the world of business.
Heads are spinning, heads are spinning.
Listen, laugh, and learn.
I am not gay. I never have been gay.
That's my voice.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, John Nash. We're all business except where we're not. Be sure to subscribe, like, and rate us, watch us, love us. Over at all our... What's that little... Ooh, what'd you made a face for?
Well, it's between...
You have to get the numbers up, John. You know the game?
Between the practice session of hello, everybody.
Hello,
and
everybody.
Love us.
Love us.
Oof.
Love us at any of your platforms of choice over at focusgroupradio.com and, of course, through our social media pages. We want to thank Christianna Silva from Newsweek, who just joined us. We're going to tag her in the audio that we release on Saturday, as well as some of the other platforms, so you'll be able to just click on her easy and find her and follow along with her. Good writer. I liked the two pieces.
I think they were great, and I thought we'd finish up by we mentioned some of the cities that Christianna profiled in the Amazon story, that the list that is up for consideration for the new headquarters. You know, when I
want to make a bet, which one's going to get it?
I have a guess, so let's do this. You're going to hear some of these cities and you're going to say to yourself, oh, it's a natural fit. But given the parameters that she put out, and again, she stated very clearly that they have not made this a criteria for selection, but understanding how the executives feel on the cultural fit issue, it's one of those things that kind of floats in the background. Yeah. So one of the top ones was Atlanta, and you would think Atlanta makes sense. Atlanta has a very vibrant publication.
Good airport.
Good airport. Yeah, it's huge. It's a hub, right?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Next one on your list.
Austin, Texas.
Again, progressive city, some great areas. I loved visiting it. I've been there a couple times.
You don't. Lie. You did not like Austin. You know what? You did not like Austin, Texas. We left early. Twice.
Yeah, all right.
I love it. We hated it. We have a lot of Texas listeners, which we love, but we did not have
Love
a good
our
time.
listeners.
We didn't have a good time in Austin. We were shocked.
We were shocked, but I don't think they're going to get it. Boston, Massachusetts. Boston was one of the few cities that if you were screening or if you were looking at this issue with only the perspective of who fits the non-discrimination check boxes correctly, Boston is one of them that is completely, you could cite your stuff right there, be all set. Has a great workforce in the area too, right?
Well, they said it has non-discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodation, education, anti-bullying laws, second parent adoptions, transgender health care, gender marker change and identification documents, has laws addressing hate or bias crimes based on sexual orientation, gender identity, among others. I put that as number one.
And a Republican governor.
It does.
Yeah. So this is a fascinating. I look at Massachusetts was one of the first states that had gay marriage. Yeah. They legalized marijuana, and it's not falling into the sea.
Also, health care for all, which
for
Mitt
all.
Romney was there, right? That's what they based Obamacare on.
Chicago is on the list, but Chicago does not have. Well, Chicago has a law that criminalizes behaviors that carry a low risk of negligible risk of HIV transmission. This is something that pops up with many cities. There are these laws about this.
Were you familiar with that? So I saw that in a lot of places. So what does it?
There have been cases tried where if an individual does not tell you their status and you have unprotected sex, and you contract HIV, and you could track it back to that individual, it's considered a crime because you've infected somebody. You've not revealed a very pertinent piece of medical information. So,
wow. So Chicago, okay, Columbus, Ohio.
We talked about that.
Talked about that earlier.
Dallas.
Next one, John. Dallas.
Dallas only had one sentence.
Have an airport.
Yeah, that. Denver.
They got pot.
Denver also has. Colorado also has that law we were just discussing about the transmission of HIV, a negligible risk activity, but that it criminalizes it, and so that many rights organizations view that as a negative thing.
My only thing about Denver is why I would take Denver out of the running is it's too close to Seattle.
From a corporate headquarters, sure, you're right.
I mean, if you're looking for
if you're looking for a geographic
right.
distance, yeah. What's your next one?
Next one is a real joy where our VP's from, Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
I mean, I'll just say Indianapolis and we'll leave it at that.
I don't see that
Next.
happening, yeah. Los Angeles checks all the boxes. We should not be surprised by this. This is California.
Checks the boxes, but again, right, West Coast.
Yeah, and West Coast and crowded West Coast. I mean, you want to drop a headquarters in and have 50,000 employees. No, you're not going to suck up all the labor there, but
not everyone there wants to be an actor.
Cost of living. That's.
I didn't think of that.
What's your next one?
The next one was Miami. Florida, as we know, has not been one of the most progressive states.
Surprisingly,
for LGBT people.
I think that's surprising, actually, given the population.
What was the other one there?
Montgomery County, Maryland, and you would think that Maryland, being its proximity to the big cities and to D.C., that maybe it would be more progressive. But apparently, the only ding they have is that law with the criminalizing HIV transmission.
And of course, our friends in Nashville. That's a big hub for FedEx, isn't it? So.
Well, she just said in her article, Nashville. Tennessee has few statewide protections for LGBT people and is far behind other states. Period. It is far behind other states.
Right. The next one surprised me.
Newark, New Jersey. Again, it checks all the boxes except it has a law in the books that criminalizes the behavior for the transmission of HIV.
Could you see Newark getting it?
Do
people live downtown?
Yeah, they do, and it would transform that city in a positive way, I think, because its proximity to New York. It's easy to get to on the trains or the
10 minutes,
train.
Right,
yeah, it's
to New York City. And then obviously New York. Now I'm assuming this is New York State.
I think it's New York State. Yeah.
Okay, so whereabouts do you think? Is it White Plains area or something?
They could probably drop that in Westchester County. Like, you're right. Like, there's plenty of places in New York State.
Binghamton?
I don't know.
Rochester?
Rochester has a lot of tech people up there.
Buffalo? I was wondering, because I wondered about New York, because I thought, is it New York City or is it just New York State?
Then we have Northern Virginia.
which is DC-ish again.
And again, there are a few statewide protections, so that's kind of out of the running. Philly.
The next one's begging for it.
Philly.
Oh my God, that's all they talk about in the news. Philadelphia, and they got the Navy Yard, the airport, and they keep talking about, and all the commercials we've seen, the proximity to New York City and DC.
Okay.
And the mountains and the ocean and da-da-da-da-da. What do you think about Philly?
I think Philly would be a great location. I think the chances are low, but I think it would be a great location. Pittsburgh would be another great one. I was born there. I love the city. But again, Pittsburgh has either the state, I think since Pittsburgh and Philly are in PA, that criminalization of HIV transmission is on the books. And
their airports somewhat died down.
Pittsburgh
Airport's lost a lot of traffic, a lot of revenue. Raleigh, North Carolina.
Need we say more? The H2, what is it, HB2 with the bathroom bill? Unfortunately that's going to stain that state in my opinion, for a while. Even though I love.
Then I assume this is D.C. Washington.
Yes, Washington D.C. Yeah.
Which I put as the number 2 choice.
My number 1 choice, by the way, would have been Boston.
That's what mine was, Boston.
But I think that Washington, and then you actually think, and the last one they have here, which also checks all the boxes, is Toronto. Now, it's not a North America, it's not a U.S. city, it's North American, but Toronto would be a logical one too.
5th largest city in North America.
Yeah.
It's obviously got good, easy access to lots of things here on the East Coast, and probably overlooked, and I think that's a sleeper.
When you mentioned it to me at lunch, we were talking about the article prior to having Christianna on. I also agree with you on that. Toronto's a beautiful city. Toronto and Montreal are the 2 Canadian cities I've been to the most, and Toronto by far the most of them. And I've always enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great population, cool city. So would you be surprised if they picked Boston, D.C., or Toronto? You'd think one of those 3?
I wouldn't be surprised. Living in the Philadelphia area, I think it'd be cool if they did Philly and talk about transforming that city. I mean, Philadelphia's got the headquarters for Comcast or Xfinity, and some other Campbell Soups around their Subaru, so forth, but certainly doesn't have what the headquarters that a New York has or a D.C. has. So for Philadelphia, that would be a big win. But it looks like a lot of signs are pointing to Boston. Now, the Boston weather is not as good as Philadelphia weather if you don't like cold.
Especially from December to March, right? I mean,
so who knows if that's going to be take play or not.
Going back to something you mentioned in our segment with Christianna, it is interesting to me when the weight of an economic decision that can impact an area has a positive outcome on rights. And this is one of those rare areas where you want to clean up your balance sheet, so to speak, your civil rights balance sheet to attract a company. This is not going to go away as other companies start looking for new space. And if the culture in corporate land is tacking strongly towards inclusion and diversity, we've always said the corporate America is always a couple steps ahead of the government, right? Yeah. And it's so this, I think, I take it as a positive thing.
Well, it was funny how Texas, Ohio, and Georgia were stumbling them, all over themselves to try to either not pass some of these
make them go away
religious bills or just table them. So that I thought that was a good sign. I will say it does feel like a little bit that Amazon's playing everyone a little bit too. I mean, I don't know if the news. I don't know if the news has been, as I said in Philly, it's a big. It's in the news a lot.
We haven't heard much. We here in New York, it's in the business section, but I haven't seen ads or anything like that. But it's a look. That's a major thing they're doing, and watching everybody step all over themselves to offer tax breaks to the year 3000, whatever, that's crazy stuff, right?
I wonder if other companies will start doing that. I suppose, for instance, when Toyota moved their headquarters from Los Angeles and they ended up in Texas, that I'm sure there was the same sort of thing. You play the different states off one another and see who's going to give you the best deal and make the decision.
There you go, folks. We're going to wrap up for today.
I like your purple shirt.
Thank you. This is a free shirt. Bob brought it home from his company.
Go to an event?
PVH. Hey, we want to thank Christianna Silva for joining us today to discuss her articles. She's a reporter at Newsweek that focuses on civil rights issues with a kind of a special focus on the LGBT community. Big thanks to Deep Discount, our partner here on the Focus Group. We recommended the following 2 documentaries on their sale this week. Divine, an Unhung Hero, and the new release this week is Jigsaw, which has Tim scared just from the cover of the Blu-ray. Big thanks to Volkswagen Group of America. Please check out the new Tiguan or the Atlas. I think the Tiguan has some great deals going on right now for lease or buy.
They both do, yeah.
Both do, okay. And as Tim and Garrett has trained me to say correctly, don't text and drive, arrive alive. I just see Garrett look over the...
You were right in the camera.
Did I do it right? Okay. See you next week, folks. Thank you.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Formerly on SiriusXM Satellite Radio and now accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.